Thanks for joining us on the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the works and worlds of Clive Barker. This is episode 154, where we catch up on the news and talk about our copies of Nightbreed The Cabal Cut that we're so excited to get. So stay tuned. So yeah, welcome. This is episode 154 of the Clive Barker Podcast. We are Jose.
Hi there.
And I'm Ryan. And this time we're going to be talking about, probably for the last time, Nightbreed The Cabal Cut. And then of course we got news just before then.
Sounds good. I know we spoke about this a lot, and we even did a commentary track. But let's get to the news.
Yeah. So this isn't a huge news day, but Paul T. Taylor had a couple of interviews. One of them was on the Hellraiser Podcast, and one of them was on something called Trunkspace. And I went through the Hellraiser Podcast one, and there wasn't really that much news other than he keeps bugging Gary Tunnicliffe, and Gary will say they love the film and they have a plan.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, well, then what is it? And recently you just had posted, I think on Facebook, this news about Harvey Weinstein, right?
Yeah.
He's leaving the company or going on some kind of hiatus because of sexual
leave
harassment.
of absence. Yeah. Apparently, not a big surprise for people who have known him or worked with him in the past. And a lot of people have been coming up and saying stuff like, oh, yeah, he harassed me, or like some waitress says that he kind of jerked off in front of her in a hallway in a restaurant. Other people are saying that he used to take these hopeful little, wannabe actresses or personal assistants to this restaurant in his office building, and then he just would take them up to tour the office and all that sleazy stuff. And it's just horrible. And now there's even something that says that Bob, I think it was Bob might have ratted his brother out to the feds or whatever. I don't know. It's just weird. But it's like all these like guys on Hollywood that are like big, fat, and ugly and in positions of power seem to have a thing about, harassing young women. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's not a stereotype, I guess.
Right.
And it's I had read something where he would like set up meetings with women in a hotel, like a hotel lounge or whatever, or in his hotel room, and then when they'd get there he'd be naked, or
ask him for a massage, or tell him, would you mind watching me shower, or something like that. And it's like, god damn, people.
Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway,
so what effect this will have on Hellraiser Judgment? I mean, you think about their companies in sort of a crisis, and now there's only Bob Weinstein. How much does he know or even care about Hellraiser Judgment? I
am not sure. I really am not sure.
And did they fulfill their contractual obligation by making the movie, and screening it is not a priority? Or maybe they've got their 5 years now, and they don't care whether they release it or not.
Right. The last time we heard about anything about Hellraiser and the Weinsteins and Clive Barker was when, I think this was like 3 years ago, 2014 maybe, that he said that Harvey Weinstein showed up at his house to talk to him about, was it Harvey? I'm thinking if it was Harvey or if it was Bob.
I always got those two confused until these stories came out and I saw pictures of them next to each other. I'm like, okay, now I know Harvey is the sleazy one.
Right. I remember when they were talking about the reboot, and this connects to something that the reboot was supposed to use that script with a story from Devil's Island that now made its way to Hellraiser The Toll.
Yeah.
And I think this is a quote from Clive Barker from 2014. He said, "I think the phrase is reboot, although I've never really understood what that meant. I wanted to make sure we sounded some fresh notes. The movie actually begins on Devil's Island. I wanted to fold into the Hellraiser narrative something about the guy, the Frenchman Le Marchand, who made the mysterious box. I figured, what the hell what would have happened to him? He might well have been taken to Devil's Island, a penal colony, and I thought that would be a pretty cool place to start the movie. We're waiting for Bob to come back to us and see when we're actually going to make the movie. So I think he might have talked to Harvey and Bob or something like that, and then they were thinking about that reboot, which never happened. So, yeah.
Well, and if they also make pretty huge movies, and how much attention are they going to put on this one that they made for contractual obligations? I mean, we've heard that they love the movie from Paul T. Taylor and from Gary Tunnicliffe in interviews and stuff, but I mean, if they love it so much, why aren't they teasing us, with trailers?
I think it's because they know that this movie may not perform well. They know that the public opinion is not behind this sequel. Yeah. They know that the well's been poisoned because people are saying, oh, yeah, this is another one of those contractual obligated sequels that they're going to make. So even though, Gary Tunnicliffe could put in his best work and he could really try to do something that, being his first directed movie, I'm assuming – wait, that's not his first directed movie, is it?
I don't know.
I think.
That's a good question.
Huh. Let's assume it is. I don't know exactly.
He wrote Revelations, but his script was altered.
Right. So, yeah, I think this might be his first feature film directing. So he might put all his best work behind it, but the well's been poisoned for this sequel because people are not going to care about it that much. It's like, oh, there's no Doug Bradley. Oh, this is a contractual obligation sequel. Oh, it's written by the special effects artist. There's going to be people who are going to complain about everything. So that's probably why they assume that it's not worth putting too much money behind it because, they just think it's an inferior product, I guess.
In the spectrum of my expectations for this movie, I think it starts above Revelations. I think that there's no way that they are doing a job as terrible as they did on Revelations. I mean, that was so universally reviled and panned by everyone.
Right.
No matter what it is, it's at least going to be a step above that. But from there, who knows? I mean, I think that Paul T. Taylor is really enthusiastic, gives us a little bit of hope, but and it might be really good for the small budget that it has, but we just don't know.
Right. So in his interview at Trunkspace, like you said, he just talks about it and he says that it's going to include some real effects, some practical effects, but also some CGI. He doesn't know how much CGI. He said it makes sense that they're using practical effects because, Gary Tunnicliffe's 2 Hours in the Dark did the special effects for this. But, so, yeah, I guess he did that. I didn't listen to the Hellraiser podcast yet.
Oh, yeah.
So
it was really, really similar to our interview with him. I mean, they hit all the same kind of notes, and they talked a little bit about Gary Tunnicliffe, how he'd closed down his special effects company and moved to Bulgaria, which we heard in his 1 hour with at podcast also. So
yeah, that was 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, okay. I mean, they love the movie and they got a plan. I'm looking forward to finding out what that plan is. And, I'll give the movie a chance. But it's like sometimes you hear these hints coming from Paul T. Taylor. Like he was saying, oh, I want to watch a movie. Is there any good movies coming out this week?
Yeah,
and then ellipses.
What was that about? And it came to nothing, right? We know it wasn't Hellraiser.
Right.
We know that Hellraiser didn't come out last week.
Well, an anonymous source told us, and we can't say who it was, but an anonymous source told us that they seen a trailer for Hellraiser Judgment and they liked it. So, and it was a source that's connected to the Hellraiser series. So, I don't know what's going to come out of this.
But when I read that, I was thinking, if it came from Gary Tunnicliffe, it could be that trailer that they've had for years, or, for like a year or something. It could be the old.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, because there was a trailer that Paul T. Taylor had seen a long time ago, too.
Are you talking about the teaser trailer for, like, when the movie was just called Judgment on Kickstarter, Gary Tunnicliffe?
They made an unofficial trailer. I think, like, an editor did it or something.
Right. Okay.
But nothing ever came of it, or they never used it for anything.
I see what you mean. That's probably what that person saw. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not holding my breath for this movie to come out, especially with the turmoil that's going on with the Weinstein company and all that. And I mean, we all remember when Deader and Hellworld were released both on the same years after they were made.
Yeah, what a
they were.
Yeah, it's just all about like when in what tax year makes the most sense for their budget and
right. So we'll see. Yeah. Thanks for keeping us updated, Paul T. Taylor.
Yeah, he's trying. I mean, he doesn't know any more than anybody else, and now it's like he can't just go to Bob Weinstein and say, "Hey, Bob, I know you're busy."
Yeah.
So
right on. So the next item on our Clive Barker news list is that the British Film Institute, the BFI, is doing a Hellraiser Halloween screening. So we found this out via Danny Stewart, who sent us a link to this. Yeah. And so it seems that if you're in the South Bank around Halloween, you can watch a double bill of Hellraiser and the director's cut of The Exorcist over at the NFT1 Auditorium. So, tickets are up for sale. I'm not sure if they're still available. They started being up for sale at September 29th, so go check it out. Oh, and producer Chris Figg will be in attendance in this screening to answer fan questions in a Q&A.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the day when one of these comes to Fairbanks.
Yeah, I guess. You should probably try to make one yourself.
Yes, right. No, otherwise I'm just going to hold my breath forever. Yeah. And speaking of the Scarlet Gospels, I think Rob had found a cool illustration. No, that was
That's
you, right?
No, that was Rob. Yeah.
That was Rob. Okay, yeah, it's a cool illustration in the Italian edition of the Scarlet Gospels that sort of shows this a hellscape and like a ziggurat kind of a temple that belongs to the Cenobites.
Right. So that the Italian limited edition is going to be released this month in October. It's titled the illustration that he posted was titled Monastero dei Cenobiti, which translates to Monastery Cenobite, the Monastery of the Cenobites, and the Italian title for the Scarlet Gospels are called the Vangeli di Sangue. So that means again the Scarlet Gospels, the Blood Gospels. So the artist is Ben Baldwin.
It's really nice. And I wonder if it was included in that super expensive collected, Scarlet Gospels.
Right. I don't have that one, but I would love to know.
We could ask David, right? I think he has that.
Yeah. Well, you can pre-order a copy of the Italian edition from Independent Legions Publishing. So there you go. If you're into collecting all these like interesting foreign editions of Clive Barker's works, then this is your chance.
Yeah. So then, before we get into the Cabal Cut discussion, I wanted to really quick just put in the audio from your introduction and description of the Cabal Cut. I thought it really gives a good idea of what it is for anybody that's confused. And on Occupy Midian, we're seeing a lot of people that are confused.
Okay.
So here that is.
Hello, BarkerCast listeners and Occupy Midian members. I'm Joe, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about the Cabal Cut Blu-ray. Hey, welcome back. So, like I said, today we're going to talk about the Cabal Cut Blu-ray. And this Blu-ray came out on September 21st on Occupy Midian first. We made an exclusive announcement on the BarkerCast blog on July 13th. We announced that the Nightbreed Cabal Cut was going to be released. It was going to be a limited run of 250 copies, and it was going to have an introduction by Mark Miller, 2 commentary tracks, which we'll get to in a bit, and it was going to come out with a poster by Ralph McQuarrie and Danielle Serra, and it was going to come with a Decker pin, a Decker enameled pin, and 10 postcards, I believe. So my copy has a slipcase, but it's not numbered because, disclaimer, I was part of the commentary track with Brian Danhauser. So, in the box here, you may recognize this artwork because it originally came out on that book, The Nightbreed Making of the Film. You can see it here. And if you don't have this book, trust me, find a copy of it because it's really amazing. It not only has the script, it has Clive Barker storyboards, it has behind-the-scenes pictures, it has paintings and drawings, it has maps of the sets. You know, you can see the Berserker and the Tabernacle. So, really amazing book. This came out in 1990 by Fontana Books. So if you don't have a copy, please find one, and you will not be sorry. So, going back to the Blu-ray. Here it is, Tim White's illustration on the cover, as you can see, with Boone and Laurie on the hill at the end, right there. And right now, my Blu-ray is inside the player. And you can see right there on the menu that there are 2 commentary tracks available on this release. One of them features Russell Charrington, restoration producer for the Cabal Cut, and his friend Jimmy Johnson, who was also an editor of the Cabal Cut. And the other commentary track features me, Jose, and Ryan Danhauser, the other host of the BarkerCast. So we did our best to give you a very, fact-filled, fun commentary track, so please let us know what you thought about it. I just finished listening to Russell's track with Jimmy today, and I thought it was really interesting because they expounded on their experience as the original editors of Cabal Cut, traveling around the world with Occupy Midian, all the events that were created by Occupy Midian, and that 50 screenings, I think, and maybe 20 to 25,000 fans saw several different versions of the Cabal Cut. And I say versions because another thing I want to recommend is if you aren't sure of what the Cabal Cut is or what's the difference between that and the director's cut, then you should go on our BarkerCast blog because we have 2 articles that will really fill you in on everything you need to know about Occupy Midian, Nightbreed, and the Cabal Cut, and the director's cut. So one article is Nightbreed is 27, a recap of how we got here. And in that article, I explain bit by bit exactly everything that happened from the foundation of Occupy Midian, from how the name came to be, thanks to and Bobby, who was the first one to say Occupy Midian. You will find out all those stories in our commentary track in this release. And that article also goes in depth on who were the major players of Occupy Midian, what were the screenings that happened, who was Russell Charrington, how many versions of the Cabal Cut were made, how the Nightbreed director's cut was born, really, and how it won a Saturn Award for Best Blu-ray Release. So the other article that I think is interesting for everyone to read is written by Ryan Danhauser. It's called All the Versions of Nightbreed Explained. And in that article, you can understand better what is the difference between the director's cut and the Cabal Cut. And, we talk about the Nightbreed theatrical cut, then the work prints that were found, and the Cabal Cut that went through several incarnations, really. the Cabal Cut had like between 8 to 10 different incarnations, some of which, pared down a little bit from the original Cabal Cut because of a few things like pacing. Some characters died twice in the first versions of the Cabal Cut. And basically, Jimmy Johnson and Russell Charrington just could not stop working on it as a document in progress, right? So you can learn all about the different versions of Nightbreed that exist, which is now really out of date because we have to include an extra about this Cabal Cut. So
every one of Clive Barker's books that he adapted and directed always had changes to the story and characters here and there, and Cabal was no exception. In the translation from Cabal to Nightbreed, Boone and Laurie changed, Peliquin changed, Jackie became Kinski. However, this is the only one of Clive Barker's movies that ended up having enough material due to changes and reshoots demanded by producers and distributors that allowed for dramatic changes to the adapted story. Decker became more imposing, more central to the story, because, of course, as a stereotypical slasher character, this appealed to the executives as a way to market the movie to a wider audience within the horror genre. If Halloween was a commercial hit and a groundbreaking film, it also ended up warping the genre through the misuse of its premise as a cheap and easy way to make millions off a movie that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce. It exploited something deep within our subconscious and turned horror into something that was less about suspense, thrills, plot, and started replacing it with more gore, jump scares, and on-screen violence by a recognizable monster that could potentially be turned into a franchise. Back to Nightbreed. If you have a copy of the Nightbreed Making of the Film Fontana book, this contained a multitude of evidence that something had gone wrong with the story and the movie that was delivered. Even Clive Barker himself said in that book's foreword, "Movies change and change and change. Somewhere halfway through this journey, I'm setting these words on paper. Maybe the profoundest doubts about this project are past, and I'm finally on safe ground, believing we've made a good movie. But I'm laying no bets." In both the film and the book, the head honcho of Midian, Lylesburg, is much preoccupied with the fact that the breed must remain hidden. What's below remains below, he keeps insisting. But fantasy is a kind of archaeology, the digging up of buried images from the psyche, the bringing to light of hidden wonders. We're lucky. A different kind of archaeology happened to this movie. 8 years ago, during a spring cleaning at the Seraphin offices, VHS PAL tapes surfaced from behind a dresser, without much to go by but a sticker reading Nightbreed. After a few of these tapes were sent to England and were screened by Phil and Sarah Stokes in 2009, they were digitized and sent back to Seraphin, and several announcements were made on the website Revelations about this new footage, and a campaign started to ask Morgan Creek for help in locating the missing footage and restore the movie. But somewhere along the line, things never gathered enough momentum to reach critical mass. But the wheels were turning. In one of his visits to his friend Clive Barker, Russell Charrington got a copy of these work prints on DVD to watch, but he could already see in his mind that there was a new and better version of Nightbreed waiting to be brought to light using this material. Along with editor Jimmy Johnson, they set out to make the first assembly cut of Nightbreed using a copy of the second draft of the Nightbreed script as a guide, and created the Cabal Cut, named after the novel Cabal, as they wanted Clive's intended vision and story to be represented as it was meant to be originally, before interference and reshoots and a different editor was brought in to complete the theatrical cut. The Cabal Cut was of extreme importance as a working document of what this movie could be, and it rallied the fans behind something that could be screened, and the word of mouth spread like wildfire. After the original screening, people were off writing about it and wanting to see more. They wanted it to be screened near them at events and film festivals. Occupy Midian was created, and things were running on a momentum that was hard to stop. 50 screenings and about 20,000 audience members later, Morgan Creek, Seraphin, and Shout Factory struck a deal to bring the director's cut to the fans in 2014. Now this version of the movie, the Cabal Cut, a stepping stone in this process, is finally released when no one thought it would happen. Rebuilt to feature better quality material thanks to the discovery of the footage and storage used for the director's cut, it still features some 12 minutes of work print, but for anyone that had a chance to see this in a screening
We didn't care about that. All we wanted was to see more. This release offered 2 commentary tracks, and I can say about Russell and Jimmy's track that it was a pleasure to listen to it, as they talked about the behind the scenes of constructing it, how Clive reacted to it, the screenings around the world, all stuff that will make you understand a little better the passion and work that went into bringing the Cabal Cut to life. This fevered dream didn't have to stay hidden below. It wanted to be set free. Thanks to everyone who supported this movement and discussed the movie, told their friends about it, attended a screening, bought the merchandise, and joined our group on Facebook to share their experience with it, their collectibles, and photos of the screenings and panels that they attended. After seeing this movie so many times and in so many forms, it's hard for me to dissect this version in particular because my memories of it always seem to mix everything I've seen in a strange version that only exists in my head. There were between 8 to 10 different versions of the Cabal Cut, and I'm sure if given the chance, a lot of people out there would still like to change it further, find more footage, make it better, mold it to their idea of perfection. I understand that. I am the kind of guy who wants more Nightbreed. I had an amazing time working with Ryan to make our commentary track, and I think you will enjoy this version, finally crystallized in this form for the release, but still being worked on out there by some of you. Good luck. This release came in 2 versions, 50 Standard and 200 Deluxe. The Deluxe added a numbered slipcase, a Decker enamel pin badge, as well as 2 11x17 posters featuring art by Ralph McQuarrie and Danielle Serra, a set of 10 postcards, and a Rorschach vinyl sticker. In this release, the new stuff shows up immediately in the menu screen because the footage that you see in the menu screen here with Shuna Sassy and the drummer and Devil Lude, this is footage that is not part of the director's cut or the theatrical cut. So this is footage that you can see in the deluxe edition of the director's cut. And here is my copy of the Director's Cut Deluxe. As you can see, it's signed by Clive Barker, Simon Banford, Nicholas Vince, and Bobby, which is really wonderful. I really enjoyed meeting all these fine actors. And I also have a couple of Director's Cuts signed by the cast, as you can see here. Another one of my pride and joy in my collection. So, getting back to this Cabal Cut. It opens with an introduction by Mark Miller, which I will play right now. So in this introduction, Mark Miller, the vice president of Seraphin, introduces you to what the Cabal Cut is and the historical relevance of it as, you know, a cinematic document, really, because the Cabal Cut, if anything, was at its core 2 things. Originally, it wasn't even meant to be seen by anybody. It was meant just for Russell Charrington and Jimmy Johnson to show it to Clive so Clive would be happy to see what could be done with the work prints. Of course, they always knew that this was not the ideal format for Nightbreed, but at the time, it was what they had available to work with. So I can tell you that, and you will find this out when you listen to the commentary track by Russell and Jimmy, but the first time that Clive Barker saw the Cabal Cut, he cried. So that says it all right there. And on our commentary track, I hope you enjoy it. We did the best work that we could to give you a trivia-filled, fun hangout with a couple of buddies watching the movie. You know, I recommend you make some popcorn when you watch it because I'm sure you'll have a good time. So let us know what you thought about our commentary track on the comments below, please, and just enjoy it, you know. So this edition of Nightbreed The Cabal Cut came in 250 copies. 50 of those were called the Standard Edition, and they were priced a special price, $50 for Occupy Midian. And on our exclusive offer to the members of Occupy Midian that happened on September 21st, I can tell you that even though some copies were sold at Son of Monster Palooza, it was just a handful of copies. Really, the bulk of the Standard Edition, almost 50 copies, were sold out almost within the hour that we opened up the link for ordering the Cabal Cut. So thank you to everybody who just jumped immediately onto these copies. You really made everybody very happy over at Seraphin. And then there were 200 copies called the Deluxe Edition that came with a Decker enamel pin, a Danhauser poster, a poster by Ralph McQuarrie, 10 postcards, and I believe a numbered slipcase, numbered to 200 copies. So if I'm forgetting something, I'm sorry, I'm just saying this by memory. But that edition caused a little bit of controversy with some people because they didn't think that it was a good price. But what I can tell you is that by the time that I'm recording this, which is a week after it started selling, we can officially say that the Cabal Cut edition is sold out. So earlier today, there were only 2 copies left, and then we got confirmation by Seraphin that you can tell everybody that it's completely sold out. And if you go to the real Clive Barker store, you will see that. So thank you to everybody who secured a copy. And to everybody who couldn't get a copy, I'm sorry that this wasn't made available in larger numbers. The reason for that is simple. The reason is that, Morgan Creek just allowed Clive Barker to sell 250 copies. So that's what they had to work with. This is the scale of the release that we have to work with. And so I hope that in the future, another company will come over and license this Cabal Cut and release it to a larger audience. Until then, this is really all we can work with. And again, I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people would like to be able to buy a copy, or a lot of people feel like they should have gotten a copy that was cheaper, but you can't control this stuff, really. It's to cover the costs. Honestly, the 50 copies that were called the standard edition, they weren't even supposed to be a thing to begin with. It was just going to be 250 copies with the package, with the posters, with the pin, with the postcards, and that was going to be $250. So the fact that you guys got a 50 copies at a standard price, which was originally going to be $75, and then thanks to the offer from the real Clive Barker store to the exclusive Occupy Midian group, they just lowered the price to $50. So those sold out really quickly, like I said, within an hour, and the other 200 sold within the week. So congrats to everybody who secured a copy. You're really supporting Clive Barker, and everybody there is really happy about this. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you enjoy the video. Please tell your friends about Nightbreed The Cabal Cut. Post pictures of it on Occupy Midian. Show us your collection. Tell your friends. Show it to your friends. And don't forget, the important thing is that if you haven't read this book, Cabal by Clive Barker, it's an excellent novel. This is one of my copies. It's a first edition, and I've read it so many times. And also, if you can find a copy of this, Cabal and Other Annotations by Fiddle Black, be sure to get a copy of this because it's extremely limited. They only made 300 of these, and it's just amazing. It's annotated, it's got essays, it's got introductions by several people, and it's just something you should probably find. So thank you again. Read Cabal and Occupy Midian.
So yeah, that was really good. A good
thank you.
Concise explanation of what the Cabal Cut is and why we're excited about it.
Right. Thanks. I made that video after watching the Cabal Cut, and like a week after it sold out on Occupy Midian. Yeah. And it was fun to make. So I hope that people don't think it's too repetitive. I know I repeat myself in it a little bit, but I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, there were 2 audio commentaries, and I watched the one with Russell and Jimmy, which is kind of a neat flashback to the time of Occupy Midian and the different screenings they went to and who they got to meet and
sure,
what celebrities went to the Nightbreed screenings, and finding out which kinds of celebrities were fans of Nightbreed that they didn't know about, which was kind of fun.
Right. And he does mention, for example, little things here and there about the screenings. For example, you keep bringing up every time we talk about this that you got yourself into a rubber band match with Tom Savini,
right?
Who was in a neighboring booth, and so does Russell. He mentions that he was just sitting there in his booth selling posters about the Nightbreed Cabal Cut, and all of a sudden, rubber band lands on the table, and then he looks up, and there's Tom Savini going like, "Ha," you know. So things like that. He talks about meeting Craig Sheffer and how much of a cool guy Craig Sheffer is and all that. How he was part of the Brat Pack, and he did some really good movies, including Nightbreed.
River runs through it with Paul Newman.
Right, yeah. He's a very promising artist back then as a young man. So I've seen also some turkeys with Craig Sheffer. Don't get me wrong. There's one where he plays the reincarnated spirit of some sort of like Norse thing or whatever entity. I don't know. But there's one that's really, really bad. But, hey, that's what, sometimes actors, they have to roll with what they got, right? So anyway. But, that sort of stuff, very insightful, talking to Jimmy Johnson about it. And my impression was that it was a cool commentary track to listen to. Really gave you the lowdown on what it was like to tour the world with the Cabal Cut.
And we had fun creating our own audio commentary for this too. It goes all the way to the end, even to the the after the credits part. So
wait for it.
Yeah, and you had done not only a lot of preparation, in anticipation of this, but also a lot of careful editing. So not editing for content, because we can't alter the time, but just editing for clarity. Sound quality, which really shows. I think that ours came out really good.
Yeah, sometimes we would trail off on things that we were going to say, and then, or we would speak over each other or whatever, and then I just kind of edited out some of those parts to make it, more clear. Maybe we can do a super cut of some of the things that we, some of the things I took out. I'll see if I can find the original recording and just see if I can do that. Yeah. Some funny ones.
Yeah, probably a little embarrassing,
but yeah. Right, especially the beginning of it when we started watching the movie. We had a few false starts.
Yeah.
And
we just made mostly nerves, because it's like, I don't know, we do this, we've done this podcast, this is 154, of these that we've done. But it felt different, knowing that it was going on to a Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah. A Blu-ray published by Clive Barker Seraphin, and that was going to be put on laser. Even though, to be honest, and I don't want to seem like we're tooting our own horn here for the podcast, but on the Barker cast, we've released commentary tracks before for a lot of movies. And most of those commentary tracks have gone on to have thousands of downloads and people who listen to them. So for this one, we were only counting on 250 captive audience members to listen to our commentary track, because that's how many Blu-rays were made.
Right.
But it's still, it felt like a level up from what we had been doing so far. Yeah, it did. And I think that even if we weren't invited to do this officially, we would have unofficially done one. And, for a second I was thinking, oh, new movies come out, we got to do an audio commentary. And then it's like, oh, we already did it. Never mind. Right. But hey, for everybody out there who didn't get a copy, don't worry about it, because we have been given permission by the Seraphin to keep ownership of our own commentary track, and then expect it to come out in the future. We're not going to tell you when right now, but expect this to be an episode. So there you go. Yeah. And one thing also that came out of, I forgot to mention, that came out of Russell's commentary was that the bar, I had heard this before, but the bar where Laurie sings Johnny Get Angry was called the Mean Fiddler. Right. Yeah. That is also in our commentary track. Okay. I did bring that up. Okay. So. But yeah, Mean Fiddler, where Ann Bobby and Nicholas Vince used to go and take some of the other cast members there.
So there were a few things Jamie Braswell had mentioned on Occupy Midian regarding our he wrote a long response to our audio commentary, which I thought was really cool. That he took the time to listen to us, and because a lot of people are just going to play the movie without listening to audio commentary, but he took the time to really respond to what we said. One thing that we had talked about, is that it's really not that clear when the audience is supposed to know that to figure out that Decker is the bad guy and that he set Boone up.
Sure.
There are hints along the way, but which one is the definitive one that tells the audience, oh yeah, this is what's going on? At what point does Boone figure it out?
Well, for some people out there, it started with the actual poster for the movie, because I put up on Occupy Midian a link to a page that features what's called the quad poster for British audiences. The quad is usually like a landscape style poster, and it's pretty big. And there's one for Nightbreed that has like the gates of Midian in the background. There's some like little pictures of the rest of the cast, like Laurie, Boone, Narcisse, Kinski, and then a big image of David Cronenberg wearing his suit and overcoat, holding the mask and the knife of Decker. So for those people who saw that poster, that was it. That was the secret. It was out right in the poster. So there you go.
Yeah, that's like Terminator 2, right? They ruined the previews for that movie. Ruined it because you were supposed to think when you're watching that movie that the policeman was the good guy, kind of like the Kyle Reese of the movie.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And that the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator was the bad guy, and then after a while it would be kind of revealed, oh no, wait, it's the other way around. But the previews all ruined that. I mean, all the TV spots, and it was all over the media.
You just spoiled that for some millennial out there listening to this. He's like, "What? I haven't seen that movie yet. Oh no!"
Right. I just finished watching Terminator 1.
Right. So, like I said, for UK audiences, that probably got spoiled already by the poster.
Yeah. Well, that's a bummer. That's kind of a lousy thing to do.
Right. So he also mentions about our discussion about the town of Midian being left out of the movie, and he says that yes, I agree. There was probably budgetary reasons, and also they cut down on the number of visits that Laurie did to Midian, I guess for the sake of brevity in the film. And the country skin, the music that we said, we wondered at one point, well, Cheryl Lee was talking to Laurie. We wondered, did second skin used to be in this scene, or was it edited in for the Cabal cut? And then he said, no, it was always there. It was always there.
I think where I got confused is I think some versions of the Cabal cut had country skin playing in the bar where Laurie was meeting with Cheryl Ann.
Right.
Yeah, but not every version. I think it was in the early ones, and then later on it was some band that Russell knew that he put some kind of blues song in there.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. I'll have to consult previous Cabal cuts that I may owned, but after a while, I'm going to say it. After a while, you've seen this movie so many times. I mean, the theatrical cut's probably the one I've seen the most. But then you have, we got all this. We got work prints. We got versions of the Cabal cut. We have the director's cut. Now we have this Cabal cut. And it's like after a while, I don't even remember, like, which one is the one where Decker talks to his mask? Which one has the psychic link between Babette and Laurie?
Yeah.
Little bits here and there that are added and taken out between versions kind of just, it's hard to keep track of all that. So
there's even stuff like which one is the one where Cheryl Ann tells Laurie we need to stop for aspirin before we go to Midian. I mean,
oh right,
it's like I think that's version 3 or I don't know.
Yeah. But Jamie also mentions the fact that Laurie drives the same truck as Boone. Which I'm guessing, hey, that saves money for production, right?
Okay, so I'm still having a hard time understanding the problem with it because Laurie drove her own car to Sheerneck to find out what's going on with Boone, right? Boone drove his truck to Midian. Laurie and Cheryl Ann drive to Midian, and I think that's a different car. I think it's Cheryl Ann's car. in Midian. So then all the stuff happens. Decker kills Cheryl Ann. The car is all bloody. Laurie and Boone leave in Boone's truck, right?
Right.
And then Boone gets arrested at the Sweetgrass Inn, and so Laurie just has his truck there, or she can go back somewhere else in town to find her car.
Right.
So,
I think the car where Cheryl Ann gets killed could have been Laurie's car. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
After a while, I mean, it's hard to keep track of these things, and really,
those cars, they look the same, similar. I don't.
Yeah.
I would want to go back and do screenshots of the car they drove, that Laurie and Cheryl Ann were in, versus the car that Laurie drove
Right.
by herself, and make sure
Right.
that they're really the same. And I don't know for a fact. I think.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about the fact that Laurie drives back to Sheer Neck with Boone in his truck, who knows if Boone didn't leave the truck parked somewhere behind Midian, like, in some place the police didn't see it first,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
it's like,
if once they killed him, their investigation was over. I mean, they thought.
right.
So what do they need his truck for?
These are things that are not really that significant to enjoy the movie. I mean, sure, you can analyze it frame by frame, but it just becomes like cold analytical deconstruction of the film. And it's like, ultimately you're going to find out that, yes, there are continuity errors. And it's a movie. It's not real. So
the ones that bug me are like, how did Narcisse get to be a Nightbreed? At what
Right.
point?
what point did he find out that he was a
Right.
Nightbreed? Yeah.
Did Decker kill him? Did he die? Or was he? Did he survive? He says, "I was dying when you had your way with me." Does that mean like he almost died, or does that mean he really died? And how did he come back?
And what is his power?
Yeah. How did
What's
he find
Narcisse's
his way
power?
back to Midian?
Right. Because we never really understand what Narcisse's power is supposed to be, except from apparently rising from the dead and not feeling any pain, after he rises. But, these are things that they're just meant to be there as like quirky characters. They're supposed to be like adding to the ambience of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't, I guess my issue there is I don't really know how it's a continuity error. But,
Right.
But yeah, I could go back and maybe see the car.
Well, we definitely nitpick a lot in the commentary track, so I don't think we need to be nitpicking that much in this episode. Go listen to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I just sneezed there. I don't know if that made it into the recording, but So right, Jamie wrote that, and then we also had other people. Oh yeah, by the way, thanks for telling us that we made a great, very engaging, fun commentary, because we really tried.
Yeah. Thank you.
Another person was Armin Yeager. I don't know if I'm saying that name right. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. But he said, I second that. A very informative and fun to listen commentary track. The personal space comment when Decker confronts Laurie had me in stitches. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, and he talks a little bit also about where he thinks that the audience and Boone are supposed to figure out. He says the 100% confirmation is the scene in Decker's lair. And yeah, that's true, when he throws the tape recorder into the wall and he's got all the pictures of the murder victims. That's like pretty cut and dry there.
Yeah. Like I said, I think I really get that idea outside the ward when Boone confronts Decker after Narcisse takes out his scalp. That's pretty much, when I saw the movie, I was like, okay, this guy's the bad guy.
Yeah, well, and when they say this was some kind of lab quality hallucinogen, it's like, well, wait, what did we give him that for?
Right. But I also like what Armin had to say here about Decker. He says, Decker has teleportation skills, period. Especially the scene with the receptionist. He puts the head on the table right in front of her and then immediately appears right behind her to stab her and is right back in his car in the next scene. So yeah, I mean, it's not... It's common in movies with slasher villains that not only, for example, Michael Myers, everybody's running away from him as fast as they can. Michael Myers is just walking calmly, and then he eventually always gets them. I mean, they run around the block, they go into a building, and then immediately he comes out from behind a door and kills them. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, right. I mean,
Well, I think in this case he put the head down on the counter and then he walked around the back of the counter.
Right.
I mean, it's just a hotel counter. It's not like he's going across town.
Yeah. But then, in the Halloween movies, they finally said that I think there was hinted that Michael Myers actually learned how to drive from the doctor who was in cahoots with the Cult of Thorn. Oh. So, hey, maybe Michael Myers has a car and he just drives around to catch up with his victims. I don't know. Yeah. Off camera.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that the Cabal cut, for me, I like it better than the director's cut.
Right.
I think it's probably closer to what Clive Barker would have done at the time, in 1990. I mean, obviously, it's not exactly the director's cut that he had in mind back then, because it has reshoots and stuff in it, because there's good stuff in the reshoots, and, why leave it out?
Right. I agree with that. I have room in my heart for both versions, for the Cabal cut and the director's cut. I mean, for different reasons, because the Cabal cut, I like it because it's more extended and it's more satisfying. And I think that this version that they edited for the release is pretty tight. I didn't really feel like it dragged on too much. I mean, there are some other Cabal cuts that focused more on the Midian assault by the Sons of the Free, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's like, okay, we get it. That part of the movie kind of lasts almost as long as the rest of the movie. And for this one, I think it was okay. They put in all the relevant bits of info. We don't get characters dying twice like in the first few versions of the Cabal cut. And I liked it a lot. And like I said, I have room in my heart for both of them for different reasons. The director's cut is obviously Clive's sanctioned, version. He's like, this is my definitive version. He even made an intro for it. And for this one, Mark Miller also did an intro, and he just talks about how this is a version, warts and all. So what did you think of that?
And he calls it a historical document. So basically, I think what he's trying to say is, I think the warts to him are the VHS footage, right? Saying like, yes, it's, it switches scenes and it switches to VHS, which can be a little jarring, and there was none of that in the director's cut, because they used only the recovered footage, original film elements.
That's right.
And in this case, there were a few scenes that they couldn't get sound for without using, I think, or was it? No, they just couldn't get them out of the recovered film elements. So there were a few things that were, right out of the old VHS footage, just like the older versions of the Cabal cut.
That's right. And when they found those 600 boxes in storage, they discovered that most of that was motor-only shots. I said in the commentary track motion-only shots. That's not correct. It's motor-only shots, I think. Yeah. And, those are just the film and the camera. It doesn't have the sound with it. I think they found some elements of sound, but there wasn't enough money to scan those and mix them and restore them. So I don't know exactly. I think a lot of those scenes didn't have any sound. So they just had to make do with about half an hour, I think, of work print sound from the VHS work prints. Yeah. Which is, kind of sketchy at times. It's kind of hard to listen to some of the lines that are being said. But, hey, that's all we got. So.
Yeah. And for me, I think the Cabal cut is, to me, the definitive version. So I don't think... I wouldn't say that, like Mark, I kind of disagree a little bit, because I don't think that it's just only for historical significance. I think that,
okay.
I love this version. I think this is probably the one I would watch more than the director's cut.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that perfectly. Yeah, I mean, there's still things that didn't make it into this version from some Cabal cuts. Yeah. But that's just, that's just the decisions that were done for this release. And I think now with the deluxe edition of the director's cut, the big box with like three Blu-rays, I think, or is it two? It's three, right? And with this Cabal cut, you probably have pretty much all that, all that people might have seen of the different Cabal cuts, because there's always a lot of bonus material, effects shots, matte shots, alternate scenes without sound, alternate scenes from the work prints and the Cabal cuts that made it into the deluxe edition. And I know now there's a lot of people out there who want to take all these pieces of the jigsaw and just reassemble them in another fan edit or something.
Yeah.
And I wish them luck. It's cool. And just do whatever you want. Go nuts.
In a perfect world, I think that the Shout Factory version would have been region free, and had included the Cabal Cut, this version of the Cabal Cut, in with the whole box set. So you'd have the theatrical version on Blu-ray, the Cabal Cut on Blu-ray, and the new director's cut on Blu-ray, and that would be like the definitive,
right
box set for everybody. But maybe that could still happen. I mean, this version exists now, and we know from Hellraiser that people have no problem re-releasing movies.
Oh, God, yes. Jesus. I mean, look at the 30th anniversary, how many different versions are coming out of the soundtrack and the movie, and there's a Steelbook, and there's the Scarlet Box, and holy moly.
Yeah.
Talk about double dipping. This is like, I don't know, dodeca dipping?
Yeah, right. And I think that, if the international rights get figured out and a deal gets made, maybe Arrow or somebody could do something with this and all the other Nightbreeds, and it would come out of Europe.
Yeah, and like I said in the previous episode, make it like something cool, like the Blade Runner 5-disc box. So you can make like a little tombstone saying Midian, and just put all those discs in there. Yeah. I would love that. Yeah.
And of course, we would love if our commentary track still came along with it. But we don't have control over those things, of course.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, quick things for people who only have the director's cut and the theatrical cut that this Cabal Cut features is more of psychic connection between Babette and Laurie after their scene where they touch hands in the big crypt where Laurie wakes up. And she can hear her in her mind afterwards, and she can see through her eyes when poor Onaka gets killed, and Babette is looking at that through the grating. Decker talks to his mask in this version, I think, right?
And it follows the branch where Hugh Corshey's character,
Joyce,
Inspector Joyce, doesn't die, right? He doesn't get slashed on the neck by Decker. He gets slashed on the arm,
right?
And he goes through Midian and kind of starts realizing the mistake that he made, and he rescues Babette instead of Laurie. And what that leads to is being able to see Babette's father lying dead on the ground, Toledo the werewolf.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing that happens at the end, and try not to spoil anything, but the ending of this Cabal Cut is kind of a hybrid between the ending of the theatrical cut and the ending of the director's cut.
Yeah.
So you get the best of both worlds in there.
Yeah,
with a post-credit scene.
Yeah, and there were some people that kind of were disappointed that was gone in the director's cut. So
right,
for them,
right.
Here it is again.
Ashbury and Decker, the scene with the Alleluia. It was meant to be it was setting up like a sequel that never happened. Yeah. It's too bad.
Yeah.
So that's the Cabal Cut, and again, it's sold out, and I know this is a big bone of contention with a lot of people out there. But again, that's the scale of the release we had to deal with. We couldn't do anything. People at Occupy Midian, we don't have anything to do with this really. Yeah. This was kind of decided by Morgan Creek and Seraphin, and so that's it. But I've seen some crazy things happening after this sold out. I've seen some crazy prices on eBay, and it's like, holy moly, dude, really?
Yeah.
They're selling.
And it looks like they keep all the little extra stuff, like the posters and the pendants and stuff, and they're selling it without that stuff, and it's like $600 or $400.
There is some righteous indignation over at Occupy Midian, and some people are like, these freaking, what do you call them? Scalpers. Yeah. These freaking scalpers, they should get kneecapped. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Some of these might be scalpers. Some of these might just be people who bought their copy, saw it, were like, I'm okay with living without this in my shelf, and just sold it again. It's perfectly possible.
Or their wife found out that they spent $250 on a Blu-ray, and they're like,
ooh-wee.
But look at the, look at my business plan. I can now sell this on eBay for $400.
Oh man, I saw someone there who said they had to give up Coca-Cola to be able to afford this version. They were complaining, I got some headaches. I've been cranky. Yeah. But hey, you got the Cabal Cut, so
and none of us out here are going to ever argue that that's expensive. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's not for no reason. It was costly to make in this small of a quantity, and they really didn't have a choice.
Yeah. They had to pay us in schmeckles, and
right.
No, actually, we didn't get paid. But we got paid in other ways. We got paid in having the chance to do this, and we got our copies.
Right. So. I wouldn't have been able to buy one, so I'm really happy to get mine.
Absolutely.
One thing I love the cover with the Daniel Serra painting, the case. The one that I got wasn't signed, so it's kind of, and it's not numbered. It's got a blank space out of 200, which I think that's the same thing that you got too, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So what we have is kind of an in between the standard $50 edition and the $250 deluxe. We got sort of a hybrid in between those things.
Yeah, and we didn't get all the little material like the posters and the buttons and the pin, but it's fine. I mean, we got paid, like I said, in different ways. Being able to be a part of this, it's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, and it was funny thinking about my initial sort of disappointment at seeing my name spelled wrong on the title screen of Nightbreed.
On the menu. Yeah,
it's like I thought about that for a little while, and for a while I was kind of mulling it over, and then I started to realize what a luxury problem that is, or just that I never in my wildest dreams, as a high schooler, first discovering Nightbreed and then Clive Barker, to think back and go, someday I'm going to be disappointed because a Clive Barker version of Nightbreed is going to have my name spelled wrong on the title screen, or the main menu.
I know, right? I wish I could go back and tell my 13-year-old self that, hey, you like that movie? You're going to be doing a commentary track for Clive Barker.
Yeah.
It's like, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So no, I'm super happy with it, and actually, my name kind of looks cool with two N's in Danhauser. I don't mind, and it's spelled right on the packaging, which is cool.
Instead of Danhauser, now you can read it Danhauser.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, it came. I think the etymology of Danhauser was it's Austrian, and it came from Tannhauser, which was like Tannhauser.
Okay. That word sounds familiar, Tannhauser. Isn't that the?
It has something to do with a forest or
from what I
read, yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I had my name spelled wrong in the credits of the Nightbreed Director's Cut and the special thanks. So I guess these things balance out.
Right. Yeah, and I got disappointed a little bit, but then the more I thought about it, no, I'm happy. It doesn't matter to me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I remember what Tannhauser is from. It's that opera by Wagner, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Tannhauser is a legendary medieval folk story, I think. Yeah. Oh, so, wow. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So Cabal Cut finally out. People thought this was never going to happen. It got leaked on the internet at one point, and then someone made a torrent out of it, and then that torrent kind of disappeared, and then ultimately things cooled off, and people were like, well, we got the director's cut. We're happy. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, there's more. Here's the Cabal Cut. And when you thought that you were out, they pull you back in.
And I think that another important distinction, because we still are seeing really confused people on Occupy Midian, this is not just taking the Cabal Cut that Russell and Jimmy made with the work print footage and then putting it on a Blu-ray. It had to be re-edited because they used all the new film elements instead of just the work print and the DVD like they used before. So there was one lady on Occupy Midian that made some just insanely stupid comment, It was
okay.
She said, well, wasn't the Cabal Cut originally made by fans and then put on torrent sites by like she was saying that Russell and Jimmy were pirates, and they were just fans that took the Cabal Cut and made it so that they could spread it out to everybody. And so now it was like ironic because Clive Barker's company is making money off of a fan pirated version of Nightbreed. And
fake news.
Yeah, that is like so far from the truth. And
it happens. It happens, I guess.
She was like, "Oh, well, I guess you just don't run in the circles where there's pirated movies because you don't know like I do."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny, but there's always misinformed people out there. It's a lot of people just made their way to Occupy Midian recently, and I just made a post. Now Facebook has this new functionality where if you're the admin of a group, it gives you like every week an update saying, hey, these are the people who joined your group this week. Click this button and you'll say hi to them. So I did that, and there was like 37 people who had just joined Occupy Midian on the space of a week. And I just posted that and said, hey, everybody, the tribes of the moon embrace you. Yeah. And I think it's a nice thing to do. I'm going to try to keep doing that to all the new members that arrive. And hopefully, you guys have 5 years of content in Occupy Midian and discussions that you can scroll through. I know Facebook is not the best thing to use a search engine. I mean, it's not perfect, but you can just go there and see all the photos that have been posted, all the discussions and all that. There is a search function in the group. So and I think, use it.
Speaking of Armin Yeager, I think that he isn't he the one that made a post where he's been constantly updating, trying to keep track of all the numbers. Like
that's right.
Yeah, 1 through 250 of the people who own the deluxe edition, and also
200.
The 50 people. Yeah, 200, and the 50 people that own the standard.
Standard, yeah. Yeah, he's been doing a great job. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of names added to it, and I have never seen anything so thorough. I mean, it's a small release, that's true. I remember people trying to do that for the 10,000 limited edition of the deluxe, but that just kind of fell apart after a while.
He started that list, and then he gave it to me in like a Microsoft. It wasn't Excel. It was like some other thing. I can't remember what is the precursor to Excel. So he gave me that file, and I would change it, and I would add to it, and then I'd give it back to him, and he would put it back in that format again, and like, okay, this is
Lotus 123.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it was something like that. Or,
okay.
Yeah, it was a Microsoft thing, but not Excel.
Gotcha.
Kind of like, yeah. Anyway.
So there's a lot of people who want to make sure that they chronicle all these things and gather as much information as possible and put it up on Occupy Midian, which I think is a great resource for Nightbreed fans.
Yeah. So on our site, you made a scene of the week, which was the Droolies. It took me back because I haven't really watched that in quite a long time. That it came from Clive Barker, The Art of Horror. Yeah.
Well, I've always been fascinated with it since I saw that tape back in the 90s. And I like the Droolies. I wish that Clive had turned them into like a children's book or something. But really, it seems like he only created those as kind of a joke for a magazine called Taboo. That was, I think, edited by Stephen Bissett. And so, I just made a little movie about it, a little video about it. No, wait, I didn't make a video. I posted a video about it from the Art of Horror because the Seraphin Inc. YouTube channel has a lot of stuff with Clive on TV and old documentaries about Clive, like the South Bank show and all that. So I found that, and I gathered as much information as I could about the Droolies from Revelations, and I just put it up as a scene of the week.
And that was one of those things, the Clive Barker, The Art of Horror. You had to cut out a proof of purchase from your VHS copy of Hellraiser 3, and mail that in, and then they would send you Clive Barker, The Art of Horror. So I remember doing that, and this is kind of neat. I really like this post because it's kind of what we're about. This is a really deep cut kind of a Clive Barker thing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, because sometimes people just go like, oh yeah, I love that scene where Pinhead kills everybody in the nightclub, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure. And then you see top 5 moments from the Hellraiser, movies, and it's like always the same kind of thing. It's like Frank's resurrection, and then the massacre at the boiler room, and then it's like usually Mr. Browning cutting himself in Hellbound and all that stuff. So I wanted to go for something that was off the cuff a little bit, a little obscure. And I think I achieved that. And so now that Art of Horror documentary, I think it's an extra for Hellraiser 3 in the Paramount release.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it's a featurette now.
And I get Clive Barker news emailed to me from Google every time his name gets mentioned. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is either that soccer coach, the name Clive Barker. I think he's like South African soccer.
That's right. Yeah.
Or I get horror blogs that use Clive Barker as a descriptor for something that's not related at all. So it'll be like, this has shades of Clive Barker and Stephen King and such, so and so, and it gets a little disheartening. It's like all this stuff. I get this big long list of news, and none of it is really Clive Barker news.
Well, we're connected to the source, so I think if you like Revelations on Facebook and you go to their website and then you keep track of all these little Clive Barker groups on Facebook, including our page, I think you'll have a good idea of all the news that's coming out.
Right. No, that's true. And you did a collector's corner because Danny had shared with us the poster that he got for being involved with the Leviathan documentary. So he has a poster, a Hellraiser poster with signatures from, I think, everybody that was involved in the documentary, right? That's huge.
He has a Leviathan poster with a lot of cast and the crew autographs, and he framed it, and he sent me a picture of it, and he was like, look at the poster I got. And I was like, oh, nice. So I thought, let's turn this into a collector's corner. And I just said, hey, Danny, I'm going to turn this into a collector's corner. And Danny Stewart said yes. He bought into the producer tier for Leviathan when they had a Kickstarter going. And he's also featured in the new short film The Offer that has Barbie Wilde, Simon Banford, Nicholas Vince, Oliver Smith.
Oliver Smith, okay.
Oliver Smith, thank you. And for those of you who say, you can't believe you forgot the name, hey, happens. But yeah, that movie is a short film that has all those people in, plus a few more actors, and even Ken Cranham, who played Chenard in Hellbound. Yeah. And Denny Stewart is in that movie too. He plays the Gimp. So he's been always involved with this sort of thing, and he's an actor. And he was even an extra in that movie Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. I think he's one of the zombies in the background. I think so. So he sent me that, and I did that quick little article to show people, something cool. And you offered a great opportunity for our listeners to get the Cabal Cut, didn't you?
Yeah, and I was really scared about the blowback from that because honestly, when we got our copies of Nightbreed, the Cabal Cut, we got a few extra copies of the standard edition along with it. And so I said, okay, here's a chance for our listeners. I didn't put it on any social media at all. I just made a little audio post and a blog post saying, hey, just do a couple of things. First, number one, write a comment on this post in the blog. Number two, put a review up of wherever you listen to our podcast. If it's Google audio, Google, what do you call that? Google Play Music or iTunes or wherever you listen. Put a review there, and then put a screenshot of that into your email back to me. And then the first 3 people who do that will get a copy. We'll be able to buy a copy at the price that Seraphim sold them.
Exactly, $50.
Yeah. And I had 3 people do that right away while I was sleeping. 2 of them, one was in Australia, one in Israel, and one in California.
Right. So that's great. 3 more people who got a chance to get their Cabal Cut. Yeah. So congrats to the people who did that, and thank you for helping our podcast.
Yeah, and those are on their way. Probably the person in California has his already, but the other ones I don't know. International shipping.
And another quick news break here that we posted on the site was happy birthday Clive Barker, because he was born in 1952 in Liverpool, and last October 5th it was Clive Barker's 65th birthday. So happy birthday Clive Barker. I know he doesn't like to celebrate his birthday at all, but we can't let that day go by without celebrating it. So we made a little article about it, so go read it.
Yeah, it's actually a really nice article that got shared all over the internet. And I think some horror blogs kind of stole some stuff out of your.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, imitation is the best form of flattery. So there you go.
But yeah, really cool. Really nice kind of little summary of Clive Barker's life and happy birthday, which was October 5th.
Yes.
And you and I both did reviews of Hellraiser The Toll, since we had pre-release, review copies.
That's right. It's coming out in January, but we had a chance to read it.
We've talked just a little bit about it. With some of the things that we've talked about are that it's the idea is that it's supposed to bridge the gap between the Hellbound Heart and the Scarlet Gospels. It takes place in the literary universe. There are a few things in there that we had some discussion about that are maybe more Hellraiser.
Right, from the film. Yes, from the film version, not so much from the Hellbound Heart.
Right.
And it seems like the Hellbound Heart was a little dropped on the wayside, I would say, but go read my review. I think it speaks for itself. I don't want to say too much about it, but yes, I mean, in this one, the major difference is really that Kirsty is not the Kirsty Cotton that you're thinking when you hear the name Kirsty. This is the Kirsty from Hellbound Heart, Rory's friend. Not a father-daughter thing. It's more like a, like a love triangle going on between her, Rory, and Julia. So.
Yeah. And on the one hand, there were, that detail, like knowing Kirsty's last name shows attention to, knowing Kirsty's last name in the book shows attention to detail as far as like the Hellbound Heart. But then there are other things that come out of the movie, like the shape of the puzzle box, or remembering Julia with her hammer, when
right.
she had a knife.
That's right.
And you had reminded me of that, and I had, I read all that stuff about the hammer, and it just didn't click, until you reminded me of that. I'm like, oh yeah.
Right. I mean, if you read the Hellbound Heart, it's a different book. Like I said in my little video about the Cabal Cut, every single book that Clive Barker adapted to film had some drastic changes done to it, to the characters. Like in Nightbreed, there's characters who are very different. Even Laurie and Boone are different. Boone is nowhere near as heroic as he appears in Nightbreed. Laurie is also a mousy kind of, very non-sexual love interest for Boone. Kinski is Jackie. And don't get me started on Lord of Illusions. That's complete reconstruction of the last illusion. I mean, there's a lot of changes to that one. So yeah, that happens. I understand. And like I said, a lot of fans will bring their baggage from the movie Hellraiser into reading a Hellraiser story. So I guess that Mark Millar and Clive Barker decided to just, retcon the Hellbound Heart a little bit, and just snap that to the movie version in a lot of ways. Which
it does have the name Hellraiser right in the title, which is like, it doesn't say Hellbound Heart
right.
The Toll, or it doesn't say Scarlet Gospels : The Toll. It says Hellraiser.
Right. That's a good point.
And also the Hellbound Heart. The characterization of Pinhead is definitely more a movie Pinhead than the Hellbound Heart Pinhead.
Right. Even though that characterization in Hellbound Heart is very, very vague. There's not a lot to go by.
He has a feminine sort of squeaky voice, and he has jeweled pins in his head instead of nails.
But I was always comfortable with that sort of evolution, because if you have read the miniseries Pinhead. That was a 6-issue miniseries released by Marvel in the early 90s. And you see that Pinhead had several incarnations over history, which kind of makes sense, because Pinhead, he didn't have to be the same all through the centuries, right? I mean, even though for people who watch Hellraiser, Pinhead comes from, Elliot, Elliot Spencer, the guy, the British soldier from World War I or something. But I always preferred the characterization of the Hellraiser comics, where they kind of made it seem like these Cenobites have always been these entities that have existed, but they've taken human forms over the centuries. Yeah. And that's how they incarnated and had a body to do things. So I was always comfortable with the fact that Pinhead might not have always looked the same way. He might have used some jeweled pins at one point and then decide to go with rusty nails at another point. Yeah. I was okay with that. So,
the character evolves because of his popularity. I mean, originally he was just one of, several characters, and he in Hellraiser he's the lead Cenobite because he's one of the few ones that can actually talk.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Probably Grace Kirby. I mean, if it was like the book, she would have had more lines, but maybe she didn't deliver them as well as Doug Bradley did. She's not an actress.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, there's some really different stuff in Hellbound Heart. Like when Frank solves the box, he sees this woman sitting on a pile of heads, and there's this strange
she's got a pile of tongues in her lap.
Yeah, and then the engineer is not that creature that we see in the movie either. He's another entity, humanoid entity that has like a head that looks like a cone of light, and he's kind of the guy who designs all these puzzles and all that stuff. And he's more like a behind the scenes kind of puppeteer thing going on. Like he's the guy who shows up if the occasion merits it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder like what has to happen to get that guy involved, because it's already bad.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's interesting to see these references pop up. But like I said, we made two reviews of Hellraiser The Toll, and go check it out. And hopefully they'll help you make up your mind whether or not you want to order this book. And if you're a Hellraiser fan, you probably are going to, and that's fine.
And as far as I know, you can still order it now. Check really quick.
Sure, it's been for sale over at Subterranean Press for close to 4 weeks now.
And I think the expensive one sold out right away. They're super limited, but I think that the regular like $40 edition is still available.
Which is also limited because it's 726 copies of the $40 version. Yeah. And then there's a lettered edition that was selling for $250. So that one sold out. Weird number, right? 726. I wonder what decides the exact number of copies that they manufacture of it.
And lettered, there were 26, so of course one for every letter of the alphabet. I think we were kind of wondering about that because, like in the other book by Mark Miller, the Last Testament, they had lettered editions, but there weren't enough. They didn't even have enough of those to cover the alphabet.
Oh wow. Right.
It was like so 10 or 15 or something like that.
Very strange. So so there you go. That's the reviews that we put up, and I believe you gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Yeah. And I mean, I like the references that they make in the story to Le Marchand and stuff like that, and go read it. I think we both did a pretty good job explaining what the book is like, and that's it.
Sometimes I see when people get on reviews or they talk about like, well, this site likes to make this kind of reviews, and it's like a website is made out of people, and people have different opinions, and different things can have different kinds of effects on you than
right. Yeah. And I think it's boring when we both agree on the same thing. I think it's more fun when we have kind of a discussion going on, like when we have different takes on things. Like I don't want to, like movie critics, like shows in America that have movie critics. It's always fun when they have two movie critics. They kind of talk and they argue about, I like this movie. Well, I didn't like this movie because this and that. It's like it gives you opposing viewpoints, and that kind of breeds this discussion that sometimes it makes things more interesting.
Yeah, and I think that this book will probably sell out just because it's a Hellraiser. It's a Hellraiser book. It's related to the Scarlet Gospels, and
sure,
and it features Pinhead. So,
one thing about your review that I thought was very pertinent and very, I agree with that. I can't help but agreeing with that. Is that you said that it's not the first time Clive Barker has had his own ideas be developed by other people. For example, for Hellraiser fans, of course, we all know that Peter Atkins developed a lot of ideas about Hellraiser for some of the sequels based on Clive Barker's ideas and discussions with Clive Barker. And I think he did a great job. I keep saying that Peter Atkins is the mother of Hellraiser, while Clive Barker is the father of Hellraiser. And, other things have happened, in the past where Clive Barker had some of his stuff developed by his friends. And, so that's a good point. A lot of people are like, well, I don't want to read this if it's not written by Clive. Well, that's your prerogative. But, not being written by Clive Barker is not a guarantee that it's going to suck,
Yeah, exactly. It's like Hellraiser 2.
You're right.
It's like you can't say, well, I'm not going to watch a Hellraiser movie that's not by Clive Barker. It's like you can say that, but, then you don't get to see Hellraiser 2, I guess. You don't get to decide for yourself whether you like it or not.
Yeah, right. So if you're going to limit yourself to just one voice of one author and you think I'm not interested in another author, then you're cutting yourself off from the possibility of enjoying other takes on the same topic.
Yeah.
And Hellraiser Anthology Volume 2 is out, and I think they did a good job with a lot of those stories, even though they're really short. But I'm perfectly okay with other people handling Hellraiser stories. All I ask is that, it's done with heart and with attention to detail, and I'll be fine with that.
Yeah. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode as well as lots of news and features at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave comments there or get them directly into the podcast by clicking the Send Voicemail tab on the right. Please follow us on Twitter at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian, like us on Facebook, and join the Occupy Midian Facebook group. You can listen on the site or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Google Play, and Double Twist. Look for our apps in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please take a couple of minutes to leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us spread the word about Clive Barker. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.